Hi there, welcome to Heart Matters, and thank you for joining me. It's been a long time since we've been together, and I appreciate your taking the time to stop by here. In recent days, I've come to understand the importance of the heart mattering because December 22nd, before Christmas, I had 4 heart attacks in 5 hours, and what is called the widowmaker didn't get its victim because God was merciful and kind to me. In fact, taken by ambulance, and through this tiny little hole right there, 5 stents were placed into my heart to unclog the arteries and to give me life. And I'm grateful to God for not only that mercy and kindness, but also 0 heart damage. But I've come to understand the importance of heart matters, diet, exercise, and the such like. I'm wondering about how your heart is. As we embrace a new year, 2023, how are you doing? We live in turbulent times, distrust, cynicism, redefinition of words, a lot of polarization. How are you doing managing all of these very difficult situations? How is your church doing as you seek to shepherd people through these troublesome days? You know, a recent survey was done in 2021 in Canada where it was discovered 53.3% of Canadians have a Christian origin. Next was 30-something, no religious orientation, then went Islam, Hindu, Sikh, Judaism, etc., but 53.3% Christian. Let me just throw this out. If 10% of those were evangelicals, would we not experience their influence in greater ways than we are in the culture of Canada? If you had a steak and 10% of it was saturated with salt, would not that steak invariably taste salty? Maybe things are not going as well as we would hope because we're not experiencing the transformation of ourselves and of our membership so that our lives are indeed salt and light and bringing change as the gospel is being proclaimed. How is it with your soul? How is it with your spirit formation, which is what spiritual formationship and discipleship is all about? We understand the importance of bringing people to the cross, and there's no question that we love to proclaim the gospel. But are we effective, and do we have a pathway to enable people to take the cross with them forward to experience what is biblically called sanctification, where their lives are being formed into the image of Christ because of such deep intimacy with Him? We all know that we want to experience transformation in our marriages, in stewardship, in our relationships. We want to have the ability to see our kids, first, second, third generation, continue to carry the gospel forward. We want to deal with our vices and weaknesses and our addictions. We want to see the gospel bring healing to the broken pieces within us through inner healing. But how's it working for us? How is that change truly taking root so that it is not only evidential in our lives, but it's evidential in our church and our churches in our culture? Soren Kierkegaard said, we should not be thinking about the cost of discipleship. We should be aware of the cost of non-discipleship, which is perpetual joylessness, brokenness, pain, enslavement. The gospel is what gives us good news for ourselves and those we love, and of course, our culture. So what is the pathway to sanctification? What is the pathway to becoming like Jesus? Well, we go to the bookstore, we reach down for those books on Holy Spirit power, spiritual warfare. We want to listen to more sermons and read more books. We want to engage in deeper worship and have a compelling vision that will somehow motivate us toward good things and experience inner healing. And I would not say that any of those things are bad, but could I suggest to you that there are 2 fundamentals that we must never neglect if we're going to truly experience lasting change in ourselves and in those that we disciple. You know, we have to get down to the fundamentals. I was reading recently of John Wooden, who was the UCLA winningest coach in all of basketball, developed incredible young athletes, and had an amazing life and an amazing career. But you know, he always talked about the fundamentals. First practice of every season began with this fundamental. He taught the players, get this, how to put on their socks. How to put on their socks. You say, well, isn't that rather obvious? Well, he said, if you don't put your socks on right, you'll get blisters. And if you get blisters, it will impede and impair your game. Well, what are the fundamentals to leading people deeper into the things of God and pursuing the sanctification that we are being called to pursue, to be like Christ, to experience the exchanged life? Here they are, two of them. Number one, being spirit-formed, experiencing spiritual formation is not just a head thing. A lot of times we think that if we just learn more, we'll become more like Jesus and experience spiritual power. I want to say to you that learning is important. The mind is important. We are over and over again spoken to about being transformed in our minds, having the mind of Christ. But the mind alone and all of its learning will not lead you to a changed life. Jesus made it very clear in Matthew 22, verse 37, 38, that it starts with the heart, not starting with the mind. That we're to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and then Luke adds our strength. So we understand that the way in which we experience transformation is when our hearts are engaged emotionally, passionately, devotedly toward Jesus. That's a crucial understanding. Well, how do we get there? I think a lot of our people want transformation. They truly do. And they read 1 John that the commandments of the Lord are not burdensome, but they say they are burdensome. Or Jesus says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And yet they read those words and say, but his yoke is not easy and his burden is not light. It's so difficult to live the Christian life. And I think it's because we have misled people to believe that if they just learn a lot, change will come. It doesn't work that way. It starts with our heart. We're going to go deeper in these things in days to come, but it starts with our heart. And how does the heart experience change? How does it get apprehended by Jesus toward transformation? Here's the second fundamental. We must not just hear and learn what Jesus taught. We must follow what Jesus practiced. It's not just learning what Jesus said, but it's doing what Jesus did. And this is where the spiritual practices, the spiritual disciplines are so essential to producing disciples. There was an old statement years ago that used to go this way: the soul and body make a man, but the spirit and disciplines make the Christian. That's so crucially important. But we need a pattern of what Jesus did. We need to look at Jesus and see how did he live his life, and then we model ourselves after him so that our hearts experience change and the things which we know become foundation to our transformed living. I have no quibble with those who have those bracelets. What would Jesus do? But I would suggest to you that coming to a situation where there's great temptation or great trial or great testing with simply the strategy of, well, what would Jesus do, is not sufficient. How many times have you known something was wrong, but you did it anyway? Or you knew you should have done something, but you didn't do it. So simply having the question, what would Jesus do, is not sufficient. We need to go deeper. And that depth takes us to the heart, and it takes us to the spiritual exercises, or disciplines. Paul put it this way in 1 Timothy 4:7, these 5 powerful words: train yourself to be godly. Train yourself. These are the spiritual disciplines, and we'll go deeper in all of this to come. You know, Peyton Manning is a famous quarterback, and in one of his Super Bowls, it rained continuously. The ground was wet, and the football was soaking. And yet he played masterfully. Later they asked him why he was so good at holding the ball when the other quarterback fumbled multiple times. He said, every week I practiced with a water-drenched ball as well as a dry one. Every single week I would throw a water-saturated football because I never know what the weather's going to be like when I get to game time. Well, game on. We're in the midst of the battle. And we don't learn what to do in the midst of the battle. We learn what to do as we give ourselves to the teachings of Jesus, but we also engage ourselves in the practices of Jesus. There is a physicality to our spirituality. Make no mistake about it. Let me leave you with these words, and we'll go deeper in days to come. Revelation 3:12, we all know 20, the invitation to come to Jesus, to dine with him and have that intimacy. But before that, we read these words, he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. I will write on him the name of my God. That's an amazing verse. He who overcomes, I'll make a pillar in the temple of my God, and I'll write on him the name of my God. He who overcomes, there's our participation of faithfulness, of duty, of responsibility, of training, overcoming because we not only know what Jesus said, but we do what Jesus told us to do, and how he lived his life, we live our lives. That's our faithfulness. But meeting that is the promise of God's creative curriculum. I will make him, much like the disciples, I will make you fishers of men. I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. There's fixity and stability and fruitfulness. And I will write on him the name of my God. There's the shining testimony of a changed life. Now here's the assignment for this week. I want you to take a moment and write a letter to God, beginning with this sentence. Dear God, the life I want most for myself is. Dear God, the life I want most for myself is. And spend some time in the quietness of your own soul, searching your heart, and just pour yourself out to him and keep that in a safe place. We'll come back to it in days to come. Well, heart matters. It really does. And so take care of yours. God bless you.